guys, welcome back to my channel. Should I read? Today I'll be doing the books I read / wrap up video for the month of November. So let's just get right into it. So just a quick stats in terms of how many books I read this past month. I read a total of 22 books. I don't know how I read that many. I really don't know. It was a mix of audiobooks, physical copies, and then I also read one ebook. This month I'm just so proud of, to be honest. The amount of books I've read this month, I am just so proud of, because if only I can do this every month, guys, how many books I can finish, go through my TBR, that would be amazing. But anyways, out of this 22 books I read this past month, I am going to talk about 7 of them that are recent releases or very popular, or books I just really want to discuss. So 7 books I want to discuss in this video today. The first book I want to discuss today is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I read this during my 24-hour reading vlog that I did, which I will link above for you guys to check out. So in terms of what this book is about, it follows a girl called Ellie who disappeared 10 years ago, and her mother, Laurel, today is still struggling to find out what really happened and recovering from what happened. And then one day Laurel meets this guy in a cafe called Floyd, and they somehow just really hit it off. They end up hitting it off so well that she ends up meeting his daughter Poppy, and now Laurel has this sense that Poppy is just so similar to her lost daughter from so long ago in so many ways. And now all of these new elements are coming to light, and she's now wondering what truly happened to her daughter 10 years ago. So for this book, I gave it an overall rating of 4 stars, which I think is pretty good for a thriller novel for me. So probably because I was doing the readathon for myself, like a 24-hour readathon, I devoured this book like no other. I was just on it. And honestly, it was just such a fast read. The 2 things I was most curious about in this book was, one, how was Floyd involved and what role did he play in Ellie's disappearance? And number 2, who exactly is Poppy? And then in terms of the book, while there are definitely some plot holes in this in terms of the police not fully investigating what really happened to Ellie and her disappearance, I still found the overall plot to be very engaging and very interesting. And the one thing that kind of bothered me in the beginning was how quickly and how early on the main culprit was revealed, and I honestly thought that something would be revealed way later in the book, but that wasn't the case at all. But thankfully, because of the 2 things I was most interested in for Floyd and Poppy, they weren't revealed until later. So while the main culprit was revealed really early on, I still found the overall book to be very engaging and very interesting and just very intriguing overall. One thing that I really liked about this book though was that the characters were really well fleshed out, especially for a mystery / thriller novel. I don't know about you guys, but I usually think that mystery and thriller novels are very plot driven, so they are very much engaged on the plot, what happened, the mystery element to it, etc. And so the characters are not very well developed, at least from my personal experience. But this book, the author did a really good job with portraying and developing all of the characters. For example, Laurel's character was actually very well written. I really liked how the author went into discussion about how that family, how Laurel's family just broke apart after Ellie's disappearance, and that just made things a lot more realistic for me. And the one thing that I was most surprised about was the fact that I actually cried in the last page. It was just so emotional and so good. The author did such a good job with that last page. I don't really want to go into it because it's a spoiler, but it was just phenomenal. Like, all the emotions that was evoked, what happened, etc., just all came crashing together basically in that one epilogue page, and oh my god, so good. So anyways, if you want a thriller mystery novel, I definitely recommend this one. The next book I want to discuss is WILDCARD by Mary Lou. This is the sequel / finale book to the Warcross duology. So I'm not going to go too much into details about this book specifically because, like I said, it is the sequel and the finale book to a series, but it follows a girl called Emika Chen, and it pretty much picks up right after the first book, Warcross, ended. There's also a lot of virtual reality action as well as real life action, and there's also the usual save the world kind of plot going on. Overall, my rating for this book is 3 stars. Honestly, I was slightly disappointed with it, but not as much as others think, I think, because when I saw, read other people's reviews on this book, a lot of them were extremely negative, but for me, I thought it was just okay. I mean, it wasn't great, it certainly wasn't terrible. It was just a solid book, a solid 3-star, I think. At the same time though, I can definitely understand why other people didn't like it as much, because a lot of the issues that they had, I had the same for this book. For example, Emika, who is the main character, she definitely plays more of a backseat role in this book. In the first book, there was just so much action and she was always right in the middle of it. But for this book, that wasn't really the case. But at the same time though, I kind of understand why she didn't play as more of an active role, because there was a lot of info dump in this book, specifically with the neural link and the algorithm involved, as well as Sasuke/Zero's history. So there's a lot of new elements, a lot of new information that was being given, and so Emika's role really in this book was just kind of absorbing all the information that she was receiving and finding out. So I understand why her role in this book was more of a backseat slash non-action role. So while it made sense, I definitely wish it was a little bit more action oriented. Another thing that I had a slight issue with was actually the romance of it. In the first book, I was really rooting for Hideo and Emika's romance together. It was just on fire. But for this one, for some reason, everything had cooled. I didn't really see the attraction anymore, and every time they were together, it was like a forced attraction in a way, and I actually thought it took away from the story itself. But the one redeeming factor of this book though was Sasuke/Zero's history. Like, that information, what happened to him, all that stuff was very fascinating to me, and I actually really enjoyed that element in this book. So overall, it was not the greatest conclusion, but at the same time, I was still satisfied with the overall ending. I still say you should definitely give this duology a chance, just because the first book was just so good. I did a review on it a while back, so I will link that above in case you want to check that out. But just be prepared that the ending for it is the most amazing, but I still think it was a solid ending. It just wasn't the best ending. The next book that I want to discuss is Phantom Wheel by TRACY DEEBS. So this book follows 6 teenagers who were considered as the best teenage hackers in the country, and they were invited to the CSA for an audition in the hopes of getting a scholarship as well as a job. And then a month later, they found out that they were actually duped, and that this company had basically used them for them to create this hack and this virus to later allow them to access all of these personal information. And then the rest of the book just really follows the teenagers as they scramble to save the world as well as fix the wrong that they committed unintentionally. So overall rating for this book, I gave it a 3 stars. For the most part, I was actually pleasantly surprised and thoroughly enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed reading about the action as well as all the hacking situations. And while the overall plot was actually really simple, the author did a really good job of keeping the readers, aka me, very interested and entertained. And now that I reflect on it, the plot was actually so simple. There was no real plot twist either, so I am just doubly impressed with the fact that the author did such a good job of keeping me, at least, very interested in the whole story. In terms of the character, that's the part I didn't like too much, because so first of all, the way how this book was set up, there's 6 teenagers, but the author randomly chose 3 of them to really introduce their POV. So it really followed only 3 out of the 6 teenagers. I don't know why the author chose these 3. The reason for that wasn't really implied or stated, so just kind of 3 random POVs. And then 4 out of the 6 of them were incredibly rich. I mean, they were like trust fund babies with like millions of dollars in their bank accounts. So that to me also just made things very unrealistic and very unrelatable. I mean, really, what are the chances that 4 out of the 6 of the best teenage hackers in the country came from the daughters and sons of these uber rich and famous people? I mean, that just seems very unlikely to me and kind of strange, to be honest. I'm not saying that they can't be, but it just seems very unlikely, I guess. But the one redeeming factor that I liked in terms of the character was how the author actually presented these like personal files throughout the book, where it just really went into detail about each of the specific characters. So it kind of helped with me to at least understand some of the characters' background and their history and where they're coming from. So that I actually really enjoyed. So I liked the book overall. It wasn't amazing, but I did like the plot a lot. So if you're looking for a fast read with a lot of action, then I definitely recommend this one. The next book that I want to discuss is Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. I read this during my contemporary vlog that I did on a whim. I'll link that video above in case you want to check that out. So the book follows a girl called Penny Lee and this boy called Sam, and they had this really awkward meet cute situation, and somehow due to the circumstances they ended up exchanging numbers and they started to just text non-stop. And this is just a book that goes into their relationship, how it ultimately came to be, as well as dealing with their separate issues with family, with friends, and with love. The overall rating I gave this book was 4 stars. So to be fair though, I was a little worried going in because I did hear some mixed reviews about it, but I end of the day, I really enjoyed it. What stood out to me was how relatable and how real the characters were. They both had these complicated and messy lives that the readers could really connect with, and also really dealt with dating in this technological world, and that's something I can definitely relate with. The book also discussed upon sexual assault and racism, which are two topics that I find are incredibly important these days, and I love that the author did manage to discuss them in this book. And even though some of the characters, specifically Penny, weren't exactly the most likable characters ever, but I was still able to really understand and relate to what she was going through. And so at the end of the day, I really enjoyed the romance between Penny and Sam, as well as the struggles that they were going through. So if you're looking for a fluffy novel, I definitely recommend this one. Next book I want to discuss and share is Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. I read this during the contemporary reading vlog that I did for the entire week. So this book follows a girl called Grace who was adopted, and she knew that she's been adopted from a very young age. And then recently, because she herself gave birth to her own baby at the age of 16 and was forced to give the baby away, she is now very interested in finding more about her birth mother. And then from there, she also finds out that she actually has a younger sister as well as an older brother. And the book just really follows all three of their perspectives as they learn and discover what being a family truly is, as well as fitting in and just struggling to find out where you really belong. This book was so good, you guys. I gave it an overall rating of 4.5 stars. The author did such a fantastic job of bringing all the different elements and aspects of familial love to life. I thoroughly enjoyed reading all of the characters, but my favorite character though will probably be Jacques. He is the brother, the oldest brother and the only brother, to be honest. I personally think that the author did such a good job of portraying his emotions and his struggles throughout the book. And honestly, there were just a lot of important elements in this book, such as what being a family truly is, does blood really matter, and learning to accept and forgive. And the writing style was actually really good. It was just so lyrical that I pretty much just inhaled the entire book. That's how fast I read this book. And honestly, this book is also such a great discussion book, as it will really allow you to think about it and come back to it and keep going back to it for days. Overall, I cannot highly recommend this book enough. This book is just so good. Everything about it was so good, guys. Definitely go pick it up. Then the next book that I want to discuss is I Have Lost My Way by GAYLE FORMAN. This was also read during the reading vlog that I did for that contemporary week. The book just follows three teenagers, Freya, Haroon, and Nathaniel, as they all lost their way in some aspect. And then one day in Central Park, their lives collide with each other, some more literal than others, and now they're just trying to find their way back with the help of each other. Overall, I gave this book 2.5 stars. I was pretty disappointed with this book, to be honest. I had such high hopes for this book, mainly because I had read some of the author's previous books and I absolutely loved them. So because of that, I had just really high expectations for this one, and plus the synopsis sounded pretty interesting as well, but it really fell flat for me. So the main reason why I didn't really like this book so much and why it ultimately fell flat for me was because I couldn't connect with any of the characters. And this book is character driven, so there's not much of a plot. It's mostly just focuses on the character, and if I couldn't connect with the characters, I couldn't relate to them, I couldn't really understand where they're coming from, etc. I didn't even like them, to be honest. Then this book just didn't do it for me. But the one thing that I really like about this book was actually the way how the book was written. So it follows all three of their perspectives in the present day, but it also talks about their flashbacks. So not only did the author talk about each of their POVs in the present day, but she also did a really good job with presenting their POVs in their flashbacks. So you got to know, or I at least got to know, more about their history, like where they're coming from, what really led up to this moment, and why they have ultimately lost their way. So that actually gave me more of a greater understanding of the characters, but I just didn't like any of them. Honestly, I think this was probably the most disappointing book that I read this past month, so that's saying a lot. Then the final books that I want to discuss, so I have two books that I want to discuss because it's a series, and I love these books so much, you guys. This book is called Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares by LAINI Taylor. These books were they're so good, guys. So in terms of what the series is about, in case you don't know, I feel like most people at this point already know what the story is about, but It essentially follows a librarian called Laszlo Strange, and he has basically been in love and fascinated with the story of the forgotten city of Weep, which had basically disappeared centuries ago. And because he is so fascinated with the lost city of Weep, he has pretty much dedicated his entire life to researching about it and dreaming about this lost city, even though at this point pretty much everyone believes that the city is a fantasy. But then one day, out of the blue, a group of people appear and they came from the city of Weep, and now Laszlo has the opportunity to go with them and find out what truly happened to this forgotten city of Weep. And the book just really follows the story of what happened, the journey, and all that stuff. And this book is just so good. Overall, my rating was 5 stars, obviously. I would definitely say that this is one of my best books of the year now. Pretty much everything about this book was perfection. The characters, I love Laszlo. He was so adorable. I really enjoyed reading about him. The world building, the history, and the world that LAINI created was just so perfect. And the plot, there was just so much action, so much mystery that was involved that you really can't help but keep on reading. At least that's how I was. In terms of the individual book, Strange the Dreamer, it was more of a slow burn for me. I definitely took my time with reading it. I loved reading about Laszlo's beginnings and how and why he became so enamored with the forgotten city of Weep. Honestly, I just love reading about him in general. He was just such a great character. Whereas for Muse of Nightmares, it was a book that I pretty much devoured. I read that in like 2 days, I believe. And for Muse of Nightmares, I really like how LAINI went into detail in terms of the history of the gods and where they came from, because it added a lot of context and depth to the overall world that LAINI created. And the writing for both books were absolutely stunning and lyrical. It was just so good. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just wish that this story didn't end and that there's more to Laszlo in the future, because these books are just so good, guys. So anyway, these are the 7 books, or 8, I guess, if you count Muse of Nightmares, that I really want to discuss in this video. Let me know in the comments below if you have read any of these, if you agree with what I say, if you disagree with anything I had to say. Let me know on the comments below. That's all I have to say for this video. And as always, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up, subscribe down below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!